Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my regular podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, played for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And
Kevin, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a bone to pick with you, okay? I've had a few sleepless nights since our last show on Monday.
Yeah.
Your parting comments suggested that my food on my cooking show on Sunday looked the same color all the time. And after it really affected me, like I had some real psychological issues. I laid down on the couch.
That's
So I had to go back and check all the pictures of the food and everything like that. And I don't know where you're coming up with that. I think you're a little bit of you're starting to stir the pot there a little bit with my food. I think that's
not really. I didn't even mean it as criticism. I just thought that you talk about your vegetable thing and it comes out orange because it's carrots. And I noticed your fried rice looked orange, and your pasta always looks orange.
Okay, and, all right. Maybe I was a little sensitive.
I don't even really care one way or the other what color it is.
I was a little sensitive, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the sign you care so much about your food that now you're worried about the color of it. So anyway, did you message my wife and so she can?
I did not. I friended her, but I didn't. I don't want to intrude too much.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because she's a big, even before you told me that, she's been doing turmeric for a long time and all that kind of stuff. I always ask her whether she's doing a turmeric shot. And she goes, no, I don't do a shot, but I use the turmeric.
I think you and Greshner are teaming up. That's what it is. That's what's going on here. I see what's happening here now.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the color, but I think it has to do with the fact. I mean, why? If the reason it's orange is you're having carrots. I mean, that's a great food. Okay, so
all right. I guess I am sensitive. Okay, I'm all right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're sensitive, Tom. You're a sensitive guy.
Yeah. That's true. Ever since I started worrying about my empathy, being empathetic towards people, it's kind of opened up a whole new me.
I'm reasonably sure that everybody who played against you in the 1980s came away thinking, that Tom Laidlaw's a sensitive guy. I'm pretty sure that's not true.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Anyway, a lot to talk about, Tom, other than food, and that is that as we just discussed prior to coming on the air, they being the owners and the NHL just sort of dropped the financial aspect of it all.
Yep.
And said, let's get playing. We'll work out the protocol. Now, there's some issues there that they have to work out. They've got to figure out what the opt-out language will be if a player doesn't want to get involved in all this mess. If they're looking at the NFL, they've got to talk about how the protocol is going to work, how long a player has to sit out if they test positive, how many negative tests they have to have in order to return. And those are big issues.
Definitely.
Because if anybody who's watching, I wrote a column yesterday, and my take on it all is, not that this should impact whether we play or not, because I think we should play. And I think the NFL has shown us that there is a path to do this, but it's messy. And I think we all have to sort of accept the fact that, it will be a little untidy. And, if you think the NFL has been messy, just think about how it would be for NHL. Let's just say there's 3 guys or 4 guys on a team, and they test positive. And now they're going to be out, let's just say they're going to be on the COVID list 10 days because they may not even get any symptoms, but they've been exposed. Well, that could be 6 games.
Right.
And in a 56 game season, if it's, you're talking about to more than 10% of the games lost in, any sort of COVID instance. So, taxi squads, all that's going to be important in Canada. Of course, depending on if the AHL plays, they have border crossing issues, so they're going to have to make sure they have guys in the city that can replace people. So it's kind of a messy deal, but all of it's going to work. We're gonna play on the 13th of January, and I think for the most part we all ought to be. Maybe thankful is not the right word. Maybe it's just glad. We should all be glad
Yeah, and we've said this before. I mean, when the pandemic first started, Bill Daley, I think, came up and made a comment that if there was a few positive tests, that wouldn't necessarily shut down the league again.
Yeah.
And we're seeing in the NFL all the positive tests, and they continue to play. So it's a change in mindset now, right? Because we're just assuming now, then I think rightfully so, that there will be positive tests and people will miss time. I thought it was interesting in the NFL too. Like, there's some games that got rescheduled and other games didn't. They just had to play with the players play without the players that were tested positive. And then the explanation was then that if the players that tested positive were kind of isolated and not risking exposing the rest of the team, then the team went ahead and played without those guys. But if in some cases where they cancel games or reschedule games, so I'm kind of wondering, like, if you're in that locker room, an NHL locker room is pretty tight space. I mean, if guys are tested positive, I mean, it's going to be hard to believe that the rest of the guys aren't exposed in some way.
Yeah, that is a situation. Although, there are more players around a football team than around a hockey team.
Yeah.
And if you remember, the Broncos had to play with not even a starting wide receiver, but a Scrabini wide receiver. Has to come in and play starting quarterback, and basically, I don't know, the league or the team or both, they didn't pull any punches. They blamed that on the quarterbacks for not following protocol. They went into a meeting, as it was explained, and none of them were wearing masks. Therefore, all of them were exposed when I believe it was Driscoll, the backup was.
Hey, real quick here, this is an interesting question here for you. This Trey Marvin wants to know, where can we read Kevin's columns now? Need that info, please.
Yeah, I'm at hockeybuzz.com for my hockey columns. And if you're interested in my NFL stuff, if you follow me on not Kevin M. Allen, but Kevin Allen, you can pick up my NFL stuff.
That's on Facebook?
It's not. You can pick it up off Facebook, or you can just go to sportsbettingdime.com.
Oh, okay, good, excellent.
But anyway, what I'm going to write about my next column is something I want to address with us. Is let's create a to-do list.
Yes.
Of what needs to get done before we can start the season.
Okay.
And we're going to start with a big one. It was almost to me it was almost a bombshell, and that is that the reports are that the Vegas are actively trying to trade Max Pacioretty.
Right.
3 years left on a deal, paying him $7 million a year. And I just want to put that in its harshest terms here, because I've been a little down on how the Vegas Golden Knights have behaved themselves in this offseason. I miss our friend George McPhee, running the show, because I don't think all this would have happened. But anyway, if we just sort of push this outward, we could say that they're now, if they get rid of Pacioretty, and who knows what they'll get for him, maybe they'll get a good return. But it seems like they're just trying to move him out to get to $7 million. But now we're saying, okay, Alex Pietrangelo, they've got in, but to get him, they've given up Nate Schmidt.
Yep.
They gave up Stastny. And now they're talking about giving up Pacioretty. Now, I would trade Stastny and Nate Schmidt, even though I think it's just a little bit of an upgrade, because Nate Schmidt's a pretty good player, but he's certainly not Pietrangelo. I would make Stastny and think, but would I make Pacioretty a trade to Pacioretty, Nate Schmidt, and Stastny for Pietrangelo? I'm not sure I would.
Well, and plus now you brought in Leonard, right? And are they saying now that they cannot move Marc-Andre Fleury, so they have to move the money from Pacioretty? Is that part of the issue here? So you kind of wondered, like, to me, when George McPhee was running, they were going in a direction. He had a plan. They drafted very well in the expansion draft. They had probably unexpected success, and even in their minds. So now they're saying, wow, this is better than we thought. So now we're going to add some better players. And they're really, I thought they were still they were heading in a direction that was still that team first attitude, right? That really good culture that they're building. Gerard Gallant was the coach. Were things perfect under Gerard Gallant in the second season? Well, maybe not perfect, but so now, like, all these things are happening. They're changing the whole culture of the team. But I'm kind of wondering too. I mean, I know George is no longer the general manager, but that doesn't mean he's not being kept abreast of what's going on with the team and the decisions they're making. I mean, I just wonder, is he now totally stepped aside, or how is it going that all these things have happened? But I'm with you. I don't like the direction they're going. It just seemed like they had a plan, they had a culture they were building, and now what is the culture? It's kind of like they're reacting to certain situations that they didn't plan on.
And I'm sure some people will sort of defend McCrimmon and say, well, he didn't count on not being able to move Marc-Andre Fleury, but
you think though that you didn't know the market was out there? I don't know.
That's my point. I was going to make is you have to, it's your job to know what the market is,
right?
Again, I don't know what role Marc-Andre Fleury played in it by not saying he would go to this team or that team. Because I believe he had a modified no trade clause, as I recall.
Yep.
So, but you raised a good point. When I'm suggesting that it was Pietrangelo for if they trade Pacioretty for 3 players, that's incorrect, because it was actually Leonard, because they needed the money to sign Leonard too. So it was Leonard and Pietrangelo for those 3 players if they indeed. Now they don't need $7 million. They only need, I think, a little less than $1 million. They're over the cap. And
you kind of wonder too, as I'm thinking about this, like a lot of the things I'm hearing is that the other general managers didn't really like the way McCrimmon was handling themselves during the negotiations to try to trade Marc-Andre Fleury. And you wonder now, did he just have a couple of conversations regarding Pacioretty, and the other GM say, we're going to really put the screws to this guy now. I'm going to notify some people I know in the media and make it seem like he's shopping Pacioretty. So now you got another disgruntled player. It could be the case, but
I don't. That's true. Because I mean, how do you feel if you're Pacioretty?
Yeah,
I think is Pacioretty not have the same agent, Alan Walsh, as Marc-Andre Fleury?
Yes, he does, because he actually fired Pat Brisson because they were trying to do a deal there in L.A. and they ended up signing Kovalchuk instead. That's right. And he fired Pat Brisson and hired Alan Walsh. That's right. Oh,
so he has. So now these are 2 Alan Walsh clients.
Wow.
So I wonder. You want to believe that has nothing to do with it.
Well, but I mean, if you're the organization and Alan Walsh posts that Twitter that he did with the knife in the back.
That's the only reason I bring it up.
That's a good point.
That was there was anger over that, certainly.
And Pacioretty on his way out of Montreal, it wasn't that clean of an exit either, right? Wasn't there they're kind of negative towards him there as well?
Yeah, I don't recall exactly how that all worked.
I think he's one of those guys that he was named captain of Montreal. And I don't know if that was really fair to him, right? I mean, especially in a city like Montreal, does he really have that kind of personality to be the captain, especially in Montreal? So maybe it's one of those deals too, that there's like all these high expectations of him. Like you want him to always be that 40 or 45 goal scorer. If he doesn't do it, then you think he's letting you down. But
well, the bottom line is this: Pacioretty, I think, was a 30 goal scorer last season, a 69 goals, 69 game season. Yep. He's coming off a decent year, although does tend to get hurt quite a bit. He's in and out of the lineup, it seems to me, through the years. But you don't want to start your season, having one of your top scorers thinking, well, they don't want me or whatever. So I think we got to put that on our to-do list. They've got to make that right, whatever that is.
The more you talk about Alan Walsh too, you kind of wonder. So typically, if this kind of rumor comes out there, the agent, Alan Walsh in this case, calls up the general manager, tries to, is there any truth to it, right? I mean, because the player is going to say to the agent, like, okay, what's going on here? And he doesn't know, so he calls him up. So imagine the conversation. He's posted that Twitter with the stabbing in the back, and now he's got to call up the organization and have a conversation, and they're going to disclose to him whether they're trying to trade his client or not. They may just say, well, screw you, I'll do what I want to do, right? I mean, it's
it's interesting. I like Alan Walsh. I mean, I understand the criticism of him. He speaks his mind, and sometimes he lacks tact. But I've dealt with him a lot. I admire how he has stood up. One of the few strong voices on the concussion issue, because I share his concern about the players. And I think you do have to actually try to protect the players from themselves.
But and you know what? You know him. I've never even spoken to
Yeah.
a person, so I don't know him as a person. I guess
Yeah.
my concern is if you have issues with a player or you're concerned about the concussions, many people do, but those discussions are made behind the scenes. My feeling
Yeah, I guess the argument would be, Tom, that we're not getting anywhere when we do that. If we just sort of sweep it under, it feels like you're sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly being a thorn, talking about, well, we got to do more and all that kind of stuff.
You know what? I'm sorry, but what's his issue with the concussion thing?
Well, then we have to be more vigilant, and we have to do more to protect the players, and more has to be done on the research of what's happening to the former players. I mean, he just believes that we're not doing enough.
Really?
I mean, to protect the players. I mean, we still have issues, although it's not as prevalent.
Right. Because I think they've done some great things. I think when a player, it looks like he's potentially been concussed, there's spotters that are supposed to. It isn't perfect.
But I'm not sure that's working the way they thought it would. And I think the biggest problem in that chain are the players.
Oh no, and they always will be.
Yeah, and I think it's and the one thing about Alan is that he and I've talked is like he says, like, he knows that the players don't like it when somebody comes and tells them
but that will never change, and it never should change. A player, like so everybody that's listening knows, players, especially when they are concussed, they really haven't got all their faculties together. The first reaction is to, no, I'm fine, I'm not hurt.
That's right. Yeah,
right. I don't, if you got a broken leg or a broken arm, it's different. But when you think, no, I'm going back out there. So it's the trainer's job. He gets called down by the spotter upstairs to say, you need to get that player into the locker room.
Yeah.
I think it's working though, isn't it?
Is it what?
I think it's working though. I think
I don't think it's working as well as it should be. I mean, I think we still have issues. And, I think that it still feels to me like there's some gray area there. Although I will say this, we talk a lot more about protocol now than we ever did before, and that's a very good sign. Right. Everybody seems to now that there is a semblance of, how long a player, what needs to happen before he can come back. So right. I'm not saying there hasn't been progress. I'm just saying that I don't object to Alan Walsh being a voice, always saying, hey, let's be vigilant. Let's be better than we are with concussions. Let's make sure that, that there's not a long-term impact, that we do more research on CTE. Let's not stop saying that there's no link between it, those kinds of things. But anyway, I want to move off this a little bit. I mean, that's a discussion for another day. I really want to do this kind of to-do list.
Our to-do list. Yes.
And in a sense, I'm sort of writing my column as we do this. So I'm killing two birds with one stone.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to put Pacioretty number one on my list, because I think the biggest to-do list is we've got to get the Tampa Bay Lightning under the cap. I think that stops on my list. And I guess that's Killorn and or Palat. Maybe Johnson's still in play, although I'm told that nobody wants to take Johnson's fourth year. Nothing wrong with Johnson. Just don't want to take a 4-year deal. And they don't want to give up they being Lightning don't want to give up that. So we've got to sort of get that organized. And I think that means Nashville. That means Columbus. They got all the money. I guess it could mean Detroit as well. Eric Duhatschek, the fine writer of The Athletic, has speculated about the Red Wings taking both Tyler Johnson and Killorn. I'm skeptical of that. I just can't believe that Yzerman would want a 4-year deal and a 3-year deal.
Okay, and we discussed this last time too. So just who else do they have? They got Stahl as a leader, right? I mean, he's not a real big vocal leader.
Well, I believe they're going to name Dylan Larkin their captain here in the next week. And the other guy that everybody loves on that team, especially I think management, is Glenn Denning, who is from Michigan, was I believe a walk-on player at the University of Michigan, and then became one of the leaders on that team. He's a hard-nosed guy, penalty killer. So I think he's kind of viewed as one of the leaders as well. And then, I think, DeKaiser has been around a little bit. I don't know if they consider him a leader, but he's a veteran guy, that's for sure.
See, but I'm thinking though, Steve Yzerman, that I don't really know him that well. Just my view of Steve Yzerman is that, and we talked about this last time too. He's going to say, okay, I want to build these young kids. That's the future of our organization, but I don't want them having a losing record every year and just losing games.
He has made comment to really that he's agreed with you. Like he has said, we can't have another season like last year. That's why he went out and added the defenseman to give it a little more credibility than they had last year.
Okay, so if he was to get Johnson and Killorn, let's say that's what
$9 million. So that's 13% of his cap, and that's important. So go ahead.
Right. And what is he going to get in return for taking those two players?
Well, what speculation was a first-round pick and a prospect, but based on my reporting, I've heard that their top prospect, Cal Foote, is completely off the table, along with their top 3 or 4 prospects, really. So
Yzerman's going to get 2 really good players, character players, a first-round pick, and some other prospect.
Right.
And he's giving up. Is he going to have to give up something? Like, does he?
No. Well, I mean, he might have to throw a 5th-round pick in, but that was speculation. Now, again, I don't know. It seemed to me in reading the Eric story, he's just talking about this being a possibility. But, it's hard for me to think that Steve Yzerman, who even talked about publicly, that they were getting themselves finding the position they wanted to be in because Howard's off the cap now. They bought out Abdicator. They're finally creating some space. They had no money for the longest time. So now that he's done that, what's he going to do? He's going to add more money back on the team, and they're going to be right where they were a year ago.
Now you're taking your team. You've added a veteran player in Stahl. You got a 2nd-round pick for him to take him on. You've added 2 real character players. You're getting a 1st-round draft pick and some prospect. So isn't that why you freed up that space so you can do that kind of thing? To me now, you added a ton of character to your hockey team. You've gotten a 1st and a 2nd-round pick for Stahl, Killorn, and Johnson. I just think you've helped your hockey team for now and for the future.
Yeah, we'll see if that comes to bear. I just think, one of the reasons why he said he was doing it is he needed to make room, for the younger players to come and play. They've been down in Grand Rapids, and one of the criticisms of the past regime, Kenny Holland, was, that Kenny liked to say, in Detroit, we wait till not when they're ripe, but when they're overripe. Right. And there was a lot of criticism about, they'd watch these guys down there forever, and then, they'd come up and they were older and 23 years old. And then by then it was too late. You figured out before you figured out they were not, top flight players. So, to take out, basically you're adding 2 players who are going to play in your top 6. So, the way I would view it as, so that means Zadina, who played on the team last year, he's not going to be on your top 6 anymore. So he's gone. So he's probably going back to the minors.
Yeah, but I'm not looking at Killorn as a top 6 guy, though. And maybe in Detroit, you can say that.
He would be for sure. He scored 26 goals last year. I don't know the Red Wings had anybody who scored 26 goals last year.
Did he really? Killorn got 26? I
believe he did. Let's look it up. But let's look it up.
While you're looking up, I know we're getting off topic a little bit, but real quick, I thought there's a good question here. Would either one of you allow Lafreniere to play in the World Junior Championships? No, I would not.
I would not either, just because he's projected to play.
He'll be in the lineup. Yeah.
I've read suggestions he's going to play in their top 6. Yes. So, if that's the case, same thing. I would not allow Jack Hughes to play for the Americans just because he's so valuable to that team. So, he scored 26 goals in 68 games.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Oh,
yeah. So he's going to play in Detroit's top 6 if he comes in, and of course Tyler Johnson will as well. So, at least you can make a case that Veleno is not ready. Joe Veleno, who played for Team Canada last year at the World Juniors and has played in the entire season last year in Grand Rapids. Yeah. Yzerman really likes him, and then now playing in Sweden. He would be projected to be the center behind Dylan Larkin. So you can make a case that Tyler Johnson could really help this team because he could slot into that number 2
Definitely.
center. So
okay, so like against your question then is, or not question, our to-do list is, so let's say that doesn't happen in Detroit, then where else could Tampa work out a deal?
Well, I mean, I think Nashville is still a possibility. I think Columbus is. They got some
like
room
your,
yeah.
I like the Columbus thing. Yeah.
And I think Tyler Johnson would be a real help for them. I think they need some.
Yeah.
Right now, Max Domi is projected, I think, as their number 2 center.
Yeah.
Now, again, that's 2 smaller guys, but they've got to get Dubois re-signed first. I think that's the only reason why they've been reluctant to do too much. Because they're saving.
You bring up Nashville too. I mean, man, they've got to move some guys out of there. I mean, if they're going to take on players like Johnson or Killorn like that, I mean,
they've got the most salary cap left. They really have done nothing. They moved out. They lost Granlund, who left as a free agent. They lost Craig Smith, who left as a free agent. So they've sort of cleared some space, and it's still all sitting there. They made minor adjustments to their defense, but they've left 2 holes in their top 6. And trying to think who did they pick up from Minnesota, because I think they think he's going to slot into their second.
I tell you though, if to me that I've said this so many times, that locker room is just all mixed up. I just don't think they're going in the right direction at all with the character on that hockey team.
Do you think that Yossi's the wrong captain?
No, I think Yossi's a good captain. He's good, but I'm some of the other guys like Johansson, who'd they get in the trade?
Duchesne. They got Duchesne.
I'm not a Duchesne guy, and I hate to say that about a player, but it's just like he just, it seems to me like there's just a little bit of selfishness there. I don't like the makeup of that team. It just seems like every time I've watched that team kind of play a bad game, it's very selfish penalties. Like they can't suck it up and take a hit. They always have to retaliate right away. And I like Johansson as a player, and I've seen some times where he's been fantastic, but there's other times where, man, he just, like, something's got to change in that locker room. And I just don't see, if they're not moving anybody out of there, I don't like the direction.
Well, I've been saying for a while now that they've got to add 2 players to their top 6. I mean, really, they're replacing Craig Smith and Granlund, who was playing, who never really seemed to fit after the trade there. But they picked up Luke Kunin in the trade in the offseason. That's the guy that I'm thinking of. And I think they believe he could play on that second line. And I don't know. It seems to me like he's just going to be a good third liner.
Yeah. So we're saying then if it's going to work with Nashville and Tampa, then it's still Killorn and Johnson going in there? Is that the kind of?
I think Johnson could help them because Duchesne can play the wing and Johnson can play center. Johnson's only 2 years removed from scoring 29 goals himself.
Yeah, and you know what? Those are Killorn and Johnson are 2 character guys too. They just won the cup in Tampa, so you put them in the locker room, and that changes.
Yeah. Now again, you're adding $9 million and 3 and 4 year deals, but with Nashville's case, this is not a young team where you're trying to make room for younger players. They only have a couple of prospects coming. Right. Detroit has 7 or 8 guys they're trying to squeeze in, which I think makes a big difference.
And no talk about like LA or somebody getting involved in something like that.
No. Well, if you're LA, I don't know why you would want Johnson, because you're gonna, the word is they're making room for their top draft pick.
Still got Kopitar there.
So, and they're a bigger team. Killorn I think could help that team. For sure. So anyway, well, let's not solve the problem for them. Okay. Let's just acknowledge that's before we start the season, we got to get them squared away.
Okay. What else is on our to-do list? Come on.
Well, we've got to settle on the taxi squad, like how many it's going to be. And I think that's real important because of, all you got to do is look at your social media. And the last time when this started in the spring, you didn't read much about people you knew who had it. Now there's at least half a dozen people on my Facebook that either have a parent or themselves are on COVID. So it seems more prevalent. So we can just guess it's going to hit the hockey world. So I think we got to decide, like, how big a taxi squad do we have to have?
Okay, so normally we have 23 guys on a roster,
Right.
and now you're gonna have a taxi squad. Do you have now another 10 guys available?
That's the guess. I think you got to have a minimum of 7.
Right.
Like have the
right. Are those guys going to be coming from the minor league teams?
well, the minor league teams are not going to start, if they start at all, till February.
Right.
So
here's another financial issue. Okay, so the owners are already going to be losing money, more money than they've ever lost. And now you're going to add more guys. Are you going to pay those players their regular NHL salary to be on the taxi squad?
Well, I think that's going to be one of the things discussed, because I think the owners believe they should just pay them for minor league salaries. And then if they get called up, they play them for a major league salary.
And I guess if you're a player like in that category, you're going, well, I really don't like that, but it gives me an opportunity, a closer opportunity to potentially play in the National Hockey League, right? Because I'm right there. So although I don't like being paid, $40,000 or $50,000 a year, whatever the minor league salary is, you got a chance to play. Yeah.
Well, it's really going to, I was thinking about this the other day too. Boy, what an advantage is if your AHL team is just next door. Like in Detroit here, it's in Grand Rapids. Yeah. So it's a couple-hour drive. So once the AHL, if it's going to play, and they're trying to play by February, it won't be a big deal. You can send guys to, although the Red Wings have sent all their players over to Europe. They're playing over there.
Oh, so, wow. Interesting.
So I don't know how this is all going to kind of work, but I think we have to get that organized. And I'm going to say that's second on my to-do list, that we've got to sort of know, not sort of, we have to know how many players. And I think the more, the better it is for the team, because we just don't know. What if you had 6 or 7 guys?
Yeah.
So I think that's.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Because do you ever get to a point where now you've lost so many guys to the virus I should say lost players, they tested positive, that now you get below the 20-man roster? Do you still play games with fewer than 20 players?
Well, that's a great point. That has to be resolved. So we'll make that, part of all that to make sure we know. So, and then there's some fun things. I shouldn't say fun but don't the Capitals have to sit down with Samsonov? First of all, they got to sort of know where he is medically after suffering that offseason. But I think they got to set those 2 goalies down, Lundqvist and Samsonov, and talk about how this season might look.
Yeah.
56 games, a future Hall of Famer has just been added to the team. We've got a young goalie. Do you ignore it and just let it work itself out because Lundqvist is an incredibly good person, or do you set it down and try to reach some sort of understanding of how this, how you feel about it?
Right. I would be more worried about Samsonov understanding, like, if let's say he's your number 1 guy, you don't want him feeling like every time he lets in a bad goal or has a bad game, Henrik is coming in and taking his job over, right? You've got to reassure him that he's the guy. To me, that's a number of discussions. That's like actually showing him too. But at the same time, with a short season, you're the Washington Capitals. You can't let it go too long. If the kid doesn't play well, you've got Henrik Lundqvist sitting there. You can't not play him, right? So
Yeah. Well, I personally, I think I would address it. Peter Laviolette is coming in there. It's a new regime. So already Samsonov doesn't really know what to expect with, how he plays his goalies or how quick he is to yank them or all that. So I would think you talk about it, and Lundqvist is such an incredible guy. I think he could make that conversation, but I don't know. That's it.
No, you raise a good point about Lundqvist actually being part of that conversation with Samsonov to reassure him. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right. And I think they'll get along great, to be honest. But
no, they will.
We need to do that. Also on our to-do list, and this will be part of the agreement, is we have to figure out what it's gonna be like for those who opt out. I don't know that there will be more than a couple.
Right. There was like 4 or 5 guys last time around, but some of those guys weren't going to play anyways, right? I mean, there's a couple of them. And I often wondered too, what sport was it? Was it baseball or whatever that said that once you opt out, you couldn't opt back in? I didn't understand, why can't you opt back in if you opt out?
Right. I didn't understand that either.
Yeah.
So we'll have to sort that out and figure out, who's not going to come back
Right.
to play.
Right.
I think we need to kind of, sort that out. I think another important issue is, we got to get Barzal and Dubois signed, two young players who are totally vital to their teams. Both those teams are teams that think they have a chance. Like, what's so odd about that? I remember I used to say years ago, and in the 90s, if New Jersey made the playoffs, they could win the Stanley Cup. If they could make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And the Islanders and the Blue Jackets are almost in that position.
Yeah, totally.
Where they're not totally in, but they have teams that are built that they can be successful in a playoff because they're hard to play against.
Yeah.
So I think it's crucial.
I think with Lou there with the Islanders, to me that's going to get done. That's just Lou. I don't know. It's awful. I can't remember the Blue Jackets general manager's name, the Finnish guy, but
Kekalainen.
he's pretty hard nosed too, right? I mean, he's got a way that he runs his hockey team.
Yeah.
The other guys too. How about Matt Martin and Hoffman too? Right, those two guys.
Good point. We've got to get all that resolved. And my point on all this, when I say on my to-do list, I don't think you can let it leak into the start of the season. Not in a 50-game season.
Right.
So, we can't just say, well, they'll be back. They'll set out a couple of games. And no, we can't. It's going to be too tight. I don't know what division they're going to be in.
Especially if they don't let them go to training camp, which is usually the case. Unsigned players usually aren't going to training camp. So, they've had all this time off. And now they're going to training camp, and if they do sign, like you said, like 2 or 3 games into the season, well, now they haven't skated. I mean, they skated on their own, but they haven't skated with the team. So, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, so I think that's absolutely crucial that we get those signed, and so there's they've got some time to get organized and get to training camp and get with these teams, because those are two teams that I think are not givens to make the playoffs just because of the nature of the beast. But they could make noise in the postseason because
now here's another thing to do on the to-do list: is NBC bringing back Mike Milbury?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
Oh, savior! Oh, it's some happy people out there then.
Yeah, I just don't know. But if you look at their history, we didn't see Jeremy Roenick again.
Yeah, I know. So, what's Jeremy going to do? Have you kept in touch with him?
I have. I think he thinks at some point there's a new television deal. If ESPN got involved, something like that. That he could be back, and
we should get him on the show. We should get him on our show.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah,
sure.
Entertaining.
Anyway, we have gone way over because we've had our to-do list, and this time it wasn't even cooking related.
I know. Well, and speaking of that, I'm going to go after we get off. I'll cancel my my meeting with my psychiatrist because I was really troubled.
Yeah, I'm glad. Mostly just because I was just struck by that I had never seen sort of an orange tint to fried rice before, and then I thought, well, that's your vegetable.
Well, you know what I'm thinking too? I don't need a psychiatrist because we got our Thursday show. I do with Dave Maloney, Larry Melnick, and Ron Grescher, and we've got On the Couch. That's one of our new segments, On the Couch. So maybe
yeah. Well, Ron will probably be on you then if he's Ron
did his own segment that was just Under the Couch, and then with Larry Melnick, we're On the Couch dealing with his psychological issues. Yeah.
Yeah. Now is Larry now joining the permanent cast member?
Well, it got to the point where he was whining and crying so much, we felt like that we had to kind of take him on. So it looks like he's full time now, but it's more, we didn't want him really full time. It's just
he just sort of pushed himself in.
Yeah, and he starts to wear all the fancy sweaters and all that kinds of stuff, And if you don't, he's the kind of guy. If you don't recognize that he's wearing a fancy sweater, he gets all upset and everything. So there's a lot of issues there with Larry. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone tuning in. We've gone overboard in terms of our time, but it was all hockey related. No cooking today. We're going to start a new cooking show. My wife and Tom will probably launch one.
Yes, I like that. You can moderate it. We'll talk about wrestling.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week, and boy, the countdown will really begin.
Oh, that's right. Yes, getting excited. All right, guys. See you next Monday.
See you later.